Coming up on Philosophy Talk.
I think there should be a wise woman in there.
The life and thought of Im Yunjidang.
The first Confucian philosopher to argue for women's equality.
Im claimed that women can be sages. Is that a form of feminism?
However, it doesn't hurt to talk to him if you have any sage words of feminine advice.
Confucius and other ancient Confucians agreed that everyone can become a sage, but in fact, women were excluded.
Our guest is Hwa Yeong Wang, editor of Korean Women Philosophers and the Ideal of a Female Sage.
So actually, the 18th century Im Yunjidang, as a woman, voiced and restated that everyone can become a sage.
She's a real wise woman with so much love to give. She gives so much because she stays in touch with what her truest nature is.
The life and thought of Im Yunjidang.
Coming up on Philosophy Talk.
Hey, philosopher. Just taking a quick moment to thank you so much for listening.
And for thinking.
And to ask you if you might consider making an end-of-year gift to support the program.
It's been a challenging year. Federal support for public radio was rescinded, our NEH grant was abruptly terminated, and Stanford has slashed budgets across the university.
But we also relaunched our website, completed our Wise Women series, and continued to question everything.
Except your intelligence. So please head on over to that redesigned website, philosophytalk.org, and click the Support Us button at the top of the page.
If you give $500 or more, we'll thank you by name in the credits.
Or give the gift of thought to another thinker in your life with a premium subscription to our library of more than 600 episodes.
And now, on with the show. How do you argue for spiritual equality in a patriarchal society?
What does it mean to be a sage?
What really matters? The things you do or the way you do them?
Welcome to Philosophy Talk, the program that questions everything.
Except your intelligence. I'm Josh Landy.
And I'm Ray Briggs. We're coming to you from the studios of KALW San Francisco Bay Area.
Continuing conversations that begin at Philosopher's Corner on the Stanford campus, where Ray teaches philosophy and I direct the Philosophy and Literature Initiative.
Today, it's the next episode in our Wise Women series, generously supported by a grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities. We're talking about the life and thought of Im Yunjidang.
Im Yunjidang was an 18th century philosopher from Korea and considered the first woman philosopher in the Confucian tradition. She was an early proponent of egalitarianism.
Yeah, she thought all human beings have the same nature, that men and women aren't really that different from each other at a deep level. So anybody can achieve spiritual perfection, if they just work hard enough.
Yeah, and that was a pretty radical idea at the time. I mean, very few women were even taught to read. If they got married, they weren't allowed to leave the home during the day. They couldn't inherit property. Things were pretty unequal back then.
Yeah, but Im Yunjidang's brother taught her to read, and she became an expert on classical Confucian texts. She really admired the sages that she was reading about. She even wanted to be one herself.
Right, and she made this brilliant move. Right? Rather than saying, we need to chalk out all those old writings produced by men, she realized she could actually draw on them to make her point. That those earlier thinkers gave her everything she needed to show women can become sages too.
Right. So Mensha said we're all born with the ingredients that we need to become really good people, and then we just have to build on them in the right way. The sages Yao and Shun, they were pretty much universally admired, but Mensha said everyone can become a Yao or a Shun.
Everyone, Ray? What about thieves and bandits? Thieves and bandits, they devote their entire lives to stealing other people's stuff. They practice being bad every single day. Would Im Yunjidang really say they're on their way to being sages?
Okay, they're not currently on their way, but they could be if they tried. They have the same fundamental nature as everyone else. They just committed themselves to the wrong path.
So if they just stopped filching stuff, they'd be paragons of virtue?
That would be a start, but virtue isn't just a matter of how you act. You gotta reform yourself from within. You've gotta take those sprouts of virtue in your heart and you've got to help them flourish. That can be the work of a lifetime.
But surely it has to be partly a matter of the actions you take. It can't just be about purity of heart. There are some things you can't do, like stealing, for example.
Well, that's true, but it's not enough to just do the right things. You have to do them for the right reasons.
Oh, right, like that guy, Ong Gyo. Ong Gyo got told, you got to go over there to that remote area as an envoy. Being a good Confucian, he sets off at a sprint. But his mother is heartbroken, and she grabs his coat to try to stop him. He just rips that coat and dashes off. Many Confucians thought, that's the right way to behave. What an admirable guy. But Im Yunjidang disagreed.
Right. She agreed that going on the mission was going to be the right call, but he didn't do it in the right way. He should have explained to his mother why it was his duty, and he should have reassured her that he'd be careful. Could he really not spend 5 minutes to set his poor mother's mind at ease?
To be fair to Ongyo, he was in a slightly sticky situation, right? I mean, he had a duty to his mother, filial piety, but he also had a duty to his superior officer, loyalty.
Yeah, but Im Yunjidang thinks that a real sage would know how to balance those obligations and give each of them its due. If you take time to think about what's important, then you can really grow those little sprouts of virtue in your heart. And then you'll end up in a position to do the right thing and in the right way. And that's what it takes to become a sage.
You can totally see why Im Yunjidang invited everybody to try to be a sage. Why shouldn't women be able to be virtuous as well as men? And why wouldn't we want them to?
We're going to hear more about all of this from Hwa Yeong Wang, a philosopher who's edited some of the writings of Im Yunjidang. She'll be joining us all the way from China.
But first, how do people in Korea today think about Im Yunjidang? We sent our roving philosophical reporter, Holly J. McDeed, to find out. She files this report.
Me too! Me too!
In 2018, the Me Too movement arrived in South Korea. Then came the backlash. In 2022, women there took to the streets ahead of a presidential election some called an election of misogyny. Candidates pledged to change or abolish the Ministry for Gender Equality. The term femi became an accusation.
Conservative Yoon Suk-yeol weaponized sexist backlash against feminism, winning the race by just over 263,000 votes.
The new president has suggested feminism is to blame for falling birth rates. South Korea already has the world's lowest fertility rate and one of the lowest rates of labor force participation for women.
Korean culture has been strongly a Confucian and patriarchal society traditionally.
Haesoo Kim is a philosophy professor at Hwa Women's University in South Korea, one of the largest women's universities in the world. She wanted to approach this traditional belief a little differently, so she went searching for female intellectuals.
Because I had to teach, the students I taught were all women.
One philosopher and writer, Im Yunjidang, stood out. Many women intellectuals devoted themselves to poems or paintings, but Im was interested in Confucian texts. Despite the overwhelming patriarchal beliefs of her time, Im says women can become sages.
She was actually the first Confucian woman philosopher in our history, I think.
Im Yunjidang was born in 1721. Her father died when she was young, and the family had to move to a mountain village. Her brother was a famous Confucian scholar and taught her. She wrote poems and biographies of historical figures. She married young and had a child, but her husband and child both died. So she took care of her in-laws and even adopted her nephew.
But he also died earlier than the mother. So it's a kind of unfortunate and unhappy situations she lived.
So she cared for a lot of family members in her life in some pretty miserable conditions. Women were meant to occupy the within, men occupied the outside.
Women were not free to go outside of the house, and they should stay within their own spaces.
In her writing, Im Yunjidang carved a way within those confines to express women's desire to be in the public world. She writes,
"Though I am woman, the nature I originally received was no different from that of a man. Though I am unable to study what Yan Yan studied, I'm completely earnest in sharing his aspiration to become a sage."
Im Yunjidang represents women's efforts to express themselves, women's desire to be with the world, the public world.
And that might seem kind of out there for the time, but she stayed within the bounds of Confucian society, where all people and things are endowed with the great ultimate.
They can be a perfect man, perfect woman, perfect human being by devoting themselves to self-cultivation.
Im Yunjidang died in 1793. But her idea that women can be equal to men in matters of morality is still relevant and debated today. The step-by-step process of becoming a sage is no small feat. For Philosophy Talk, I'm Holly J. McDeed.
You can listen to the rest of this episode by purchasing it on iTunes Music. Or for unlimited listening, subscribe to our archive at philosophytalk.org.